Today, the first day of our English coaching week. We had a lot of interesting information before. But at first day, we had personal stories, and we had a coaching session with Gorka Bartolome, and yesterday we had a great meeting with Sam McGill. So today we will have a mentoring session with a master certified coach, Ester Landa, from USA. But I think that I would say that Esther is a world citizen, not just from USA. Esther is a master certified coach ICF, mentor, supervisor, and certified nonverbal master coach, and certified deep transformational coach, certified executive coach. So a lot of levels. Okay, so Esther, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Dear participants, please put plus in our chat box if you see and hear me and Esther well.
Okay, that's perfect. I think, Zhenya, I can take it from here. Thank you so much, and I'm really happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you too. Okay, so you will have 1 hour and 15 minutes, and after, dear participants, you can prepare your questions, and we'll ask them in the end of our mentoring session. Okay? So the floor is yours.
Zhenya, maybe you will help me, maybe you will show on the screen the transcription of this session. Is it okay for you? If it is close, if it's not, I can do it by myself.
I can help you, of course, if you need.
Thank you so much.
1 minute.
So I see that 33 people are now participating. Maybe someone else will catch us later.
Yeah,
so,
for 3 days, we had 50 participants. Every day, the participants. Yes, so
that's beautiful that so many people are interested and participating online. I think quite a lot of people would watching the recording because it's a daytime in most of the Russian cities. So I think a lot of people are at work. So, okay, maybe the first question while we're waiting for other participants would be how many people has already an experience in mentoring processes, maybe individual or group mentoring. You can just write in the chat box maybe how many mentoring sessions you already had in your life. 2, 7, beautiful. 15, that's beautiful. And if it's your first one, please write us about it, because I should consider it also. And maybe one more question before we start is what's the level of your credential? Maybe you have ACC, PCC, MCC credential for now, or you are preparing yourself for your first credential. Applied for ACC.
Okay, Esther, do you see my demonstration of my...
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I can see it. And I can also see a lot of familiar names in the chat box, so really happy to connect with you again, dear colleagues.
So we can we start?
Yeah, I think 5 minutes already. I think
okay.
everyone Yes, who wanted
So,
to be here is present.
participants, it will be as an individual mentoring session, so please switch off your cameras and your microphones, and we will ask your questions in the end. At the end. Okay?
And maybe if you will hear something which concerns you, or you will have some ongoing questions, please write them in the chat box. So Zhenya or I, we will later just answer them. And I would like to welcome Katya. She's our mentee today.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Esther. Happy to see you.
Yeah, happy to see you again. So, how do you feel yourself?
Well, to be honest, I'm quite nervous, of course. I didn't have so many mentoring sessions, as you know, and it's my first one in English, and it was my first experience in providing a session in English. So, of course, one part of me is really nervous, but another part is very much excited. And I feel myself like a sponge, you know, ready to absorb everything that you're going to say, everything that's going to happen today.
Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing. And I think there's like no reason to be nervous, because usually this type of conferences, the participants are very much supporting, because we are all colleagues here and we are all accepting what is happening. And I suppose the colleagues will accept a lot of mistakes in English, which I will be making, I think, because I have only been living in USA like for 6 months. So my English is not as perfect as maybe it used to be or as it will be, but I will try my best just to go with the flow. And the links that we will need for today's mentoring process, I already uploaded them in the chat, but maybe Zhenya will help me, or Dmitry, if he hears us now. So in the beginning, I just sent 2 links. The first link is PCC markers in English. They are the only markers that we have for now in ICF. And Zhenya, they're in the beginning of the chat. And also the second link, which we will need today, is the minimal requirement for ACC level, because our mentee today is applying for ACC credential soon, I hope, this year. Yes, Katya?
I hope so.
Yes, so all my comments will be focusing on mostly on ACC level, but of course I will tell how to maybe improve this session for PCC credential. And maybe what you should know, because it will of course influence my mentoring. I know Katya for almost a year. She's my student in my course in preparation for ACC and PCC level, so I already know something about Katya, and maybe it will influence the way I will mentor her. So you probably should know it. So, okay, Kat, what do you think about your session in general?
As you know, I have a very high criticism level. Self-criticism is just above me. I read it and I've listened it several times, and every time it was completely different. I had a completely different feeling. One time it was, oh my God, it was awful. The next time it was, no, there were really good questions and there were really good parts in it. And the next time again, oh no, it was awful. But in general, I think that I can thank myself for the courage, because it's really, I needed a lot of courage to do it for mentoring. And of course, after listening, after reading, I've saw a lot of places where I missed the client's answer. I can say, she's speaking about this. Why don't you hear it? Why are you talking about completely different things for the moment? In general, in general, I think that's still, maybe in some way I can say I can be proud of it. But general, I think, I don't think, I'm sure that there are thousands of ways to improve it. And really there were lots of things that I missed. And I want to confess as well that before this, my first session in English, of course, my English level is also very low comparing to what it used to be before, because 10 years ago I used to work in English 24 hours a day for 6 years. But then when you don't practice, you lose some things. But when I used to listen English sessions of PCCs and MCCs in English, I was always little bit envy, because I was always thinking that English is much more easy for coaching because it's the first language of coaching, and there are so many words, so many questions that you can, so they come, how to say, they just come from inside of you. You don't have to think about them. And for this, I was sure before that English is much more easier. But then it turned out that to speak English, to understand English, to read English, and to provide a session in English, the coaching session, are absolutely different things, the way you think. So, of course, I can see here some reasons, as a reason of some of my mistakes, I can name this translating to English at the same time, because I was very much concentrated on the words the client was saying in English. I was at the same time, I was not thinking in English at the moment. I was, maybe half of the time I was thinking in English, and I think me, personally, I can see it when I read the session, where it was naturally coming, where the question was naturally coming from the answer, and where I was keeping in mind what I wanted to ask in Russian. I was translating it inside, and at the same moment maybe losing some of the keywords the client was saying. So that's why, all in all, I think it was a good experience, and I hope it wasn't that bad as it seemed to me after the first time.
Come on. No, I can, frankly say to you that it's a beautiful session, and taking into consideration that you're applying for ACC level, for me personally as a mentor, I can say that it's a beautiful example of a strong ACC level. And maybe when I will comment each sentence step by step, maybe you will see, and if you see some opportunities maybe that you missed, or maybe you can just say about them now, and I think that will enrich our mentoring. And maybe it is a good idea that you will say your ideas first, then I wouldn't just bring it to you. It will be your own ideas. That would be also beautiful. Okay, and so there is no numbers on the transcription, but I will try to read the phrases. I hope most of the participants have read or listened to the session, so I wouldn't read the answers of our coachee. And if I'm not mistaken, she is also present in this conference. So please, Ksenia, if you are with us, and if you need, and if you want to comment something, or if you have some ideas also, please share it with us. You can take a microphone. I think it also will enrich the whole process. So we will skip the first hi, and we will come to the second phrase. The phrase is that I want to thank you for this session, for letting me record it. And I think that's an example of taking a permission from the client, but we all understand that you already took a permission to record and to present it on the conference. But it is very important to do it also in the session, and it's kind of linked to the first ICF competence. And please, colleagues, if it is comfortable for you, open the first link in the chat box, the PCC markers, maybe on your phone, because it will help you to understand what I'm talking about, because I will just talk about the markers. Of course, I will name them, but you can just fully understand the whole process if you will look at them, if you don't know them by heart. I think very few people in the world know them by heart, probably the people who created it. So, and the third phrase before we start, maybe you want to tell me something. That was a good example of rapport. And the third competence, creating trust and intimacy, and more particularly the 3.2, the mark number 2, is coach express support for the client. And I think what you really meant here is something that I should know about the way you prefer to be coached, because you didn't just edit it, and that's why the client asked like what, because maybe she didn't catch what did you mean. But I understand that your intention was to understand maybe the way of her learning, or the way of she prefers this process, knowing of course that she is an experienced coachee. And it is very important to create this rapport. So our colleagues, maybe if you see it for the first time, this type of question, you can use it in your sessions. It's very helpful, especially if you don't know a client very well. And also I see in this phrase the example of 3.3, the marker number 3 in competence 3. Coach aligns the client to fully express herself, because you really was inviting your client to express herself in using this question. Maybe even if we know that our client is a coachee, is experienced coachee, the good idea will be asked that maybe in the fourth phrase you can tell that like something about your reflection processes or your coachee patterns, but we can use it only if we know that our client is coached by himself or very experienced coachee, and we also can use it in our sessions. So if you will follow my numbers, it's coach phrase number 5. Yes, and please, if you are in the street or somewhere else in the cafe, maybe I kindly ask you to mute yourself, so this background noise wouldn't disturb our session. Thank you so much. So the phrase number 5 is, let me find it. So what would you like to talk about today? And this phrase, of course, is referring us to the second competence, to the marker number accomplished in that session. So I think no comments on that. And the next question is, yeah, thank you, Zhenya. What do you mean by the structure? So a client, for those people who haven't listened to the session, so the client uses a word structure, and Katya asked, what do you mean by that? And that's a competence 5, marker 2. Coach explores the client use of language. So she explores what is the structure for our coachee. What really does coachee mean by saying that? So the sentence number 7, sorry you don't have numbers, but it's like the next one. And why it is so important to you to have this structure or timetable? That referred us to competence 2, marker 3. Coach explores what is important or meaningful to the client about what she wants to accomplish in this session. It's a very important question, and I think usually when coaches use this competence 2, marker 3, it very much enrich the session, and I think it's very important because it can very fast bring us to the values of the client. So the next question, and for planning better, what exactly do you need to do? Well, you know, sometimes when the competence will be the same, I wouldn't just name it, I will name another one which is also presented in this question, just not to repeat myself very much and to make you feel boring. So in this sentence, I would like to mark the competence 5, number 5. It's coach explores the client behaviors and how the client perceives the world. And yeah, thank you. And the next coaching question of the coach, sorry. And what would be the best result for today for you? Of course, it's the second competence, creating an agreement. And I choose the marker 2. It is that coach helps the client to define measures of success. It's very open, it's very important in creating the agreement. And the next phrase is, as you mentioned before, as you mentioned before, why do you think you don't have it until now? So I think that it's also referring us to active listening, to marker number 1. Coach's questions and observations are customized by using what the coach has learned about who the client is and the client situation, because you can just clearly see that Katya used what her coachee said before in the session, and she just brings it to the client. Katya, does it make sense when I just name the phrase and say what marker and what competence it is?
Yes, thank you very, very much. Yeah, that's great.
And I also want to follow up with our colleagues. Do you understand what I'm doing? Do you see these markers? Should I change something? I see at least 2 pluses. I hope. So if you want to change something, you just say to me, because I'm also doing it for you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the next question. You said you said in the beginning that having control of your life is really important for you, and you may need this predictability. Can you tell me how does it fit with the last thing you said, that you are okay without structure and you don't need it in your life? So Katya is now like challenging the congruency of the client and of what she's bringing into the session. And I think it's referring us also both to the active listening competence, and it's marker number 1 and marker number 6. Now marker number 1 is I already just read it to you. Number 6 is coach explores how the client perceives her world. And also I think that it very much refers us to the competence number 6, marker 1. Coach asks questions about the client, her way of thinking, assumptions, beliefs, values, etc. Because if you don't remember the session, or maybe you haven't read it, the first part of the phrase of the coach, Katya uses strictly coachee's words. And that's why I mentioned these markers. And then she is asking the question. And I think this question also may be referred to the 8 competence, is creating awareness. So the next phrase, let me know if I'm wrong. From what you said, I can hear that this control thing is quite important for you. So we can see here a beautiful example of the competence number 7 and markers 1 and 2. So coach shares observations, intuition, comments, and thoughts and feelings to serve the clients of forward movement in the session. And the second marker shows us that coach is doing it without any attachment to being right. And what is showing us that without no attachment is the let me know if I'm wrong. It's very elegant, the way that saying that I'm not like completely sure, but and let me know if I'm wrong. From what you said, I can hear. So the assumption also is made very elegant. So it's not like direct saying that, oh sorry, not it's direct communication, but it's directive. Maybe somebody know how it is correctly to say in English. Maybe you, Katya, know this directiveness, how you will translate it into English.
I'm struggling now for the word.
Maybe some of our colleagues will help us in the chat box. So you can see that there is no present of this behavior in this phrase. Assertive. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Xenia. So yeah, there is no shown of that. And so our next two questions, I think they are both following powerful questions and values in the same moment. The questions are, what does it bring to your life? What does it give you more? The feeling of being able to control. And the second question, and apart from the feeling of control, what does it give you more? This sense of freedom. You can see that there's a beautiful questions to understand the value of what it is really bringing to the client. They a little bit looks the same, but I can say that it's a pattern of the coach. I can say that if we assume that Katya is applying for ACC level, it's just completely acceptable to ask these two questions, and it's very close to each other. And I think they did a good role in this session. And maybe, Katya, maybe you have some comments like before this phrase. It is the 14th phrase actually. Maybe you see like the opportunities which you want to say, or maybe I should go to the end and then you will say the opportunities that you think you missed, or which is good to add. How do you like it?
Maybe I just add in the end, because I'm so much listening to every phrase you say. Now I'm thinking at the same time. Maybe here it's I can see that they're almost same, and maybe again two questions inside of one phrase. It's like little bit. Maybe it would be okay. The previous phrase, for example, what does it give you? Maybe it would be okay to stop there and wait for the answer before giving the second question, which was almost the same, but a bit with different direction as far as.
Well, we should say to our colleagues that once you started your preparation for certification, that was your thing. Yes, these long sentences. And now I can say that you improved, I think, like 90% you improved. And maybe it's just only 10% in the whole session that is a long phrase. So I can say that for you, it's quite a short phrase.
Thank you.
Really. Yes, because we should understand one's uniqueness when we do mentoring, and maybe when you will be listening to your clients, if you are a mentor yourself, if any of the colleagues are mentor present, you should understand that the rules, of course, the same to everybody, but we should understand the uniqueness of the coach, because we are not like bio-robots. We are all with our how to say it correctly? I can say uniqueness and the way that we master things. And so for Katya, it's a short phrase. And maybe once in the session you did a long phrase, I would tell you, because I just wrote it to myself. But for you, it's really beautiful change that you made in last year. So, and I think I will also tell you it in the end. Here was a beautiful opportunity to ask maybe about the role or about the metaphor, which may be good. Maybe it improved the session, but I will tell you it in the end. But here was also an opportunity.
Yes, when I listened now, I'm sorry. Now when you mentioned that, I remember when I was listening for the first time, I saw that here when Xenia is saying that it's the most important thing for me to be free, and it's what life is about. That the next time I listened, the question came to my mind about like, and who are you when you are free and you are able to do what you want?
Yes, perfect. And maybe, and when it will happen, yes, when it will be present in your life, then what will it change, or how you will be changed. Maybe I said it not correctly in English, but just catch the idea, please, colleagues, because I can make mistakes. So coming to the next question is, and in your current situation, where is freedom now? So of course it's active listening, and I put here 5.6, so the marker number 6. When coach inquires about how the client perceives her world, and it's also a great example of powerful questioning, marker number 5. When coach asks clear, direct, primarily open-ended questions one at a time at a pace that allows for thinking and reflection by the client. And once again, Katya was very much and working on this marker this year, and I can see that she improved very much. And this was really a good example of just clear question once at a time. So we are coming to the next phrase of the coach. And did you ever had like something? Yes, ever had. Yeah, I also see this mistake. So did you ever had like some similar situation before baby birth? For example, when you have to do things you didn't like, or when some situations you didn't expect and that were out of your control. So this question maybe look long, but it's absolutely reasonable. So I wouldn't change anything in this question. And of course, it's exploring the world of the client and just maybe exploring the experience that she already had. Maybe you were trying to find some resources in the past, or just maybe some beliefs which is already presented in the system, and maybe your coachee is aware of them. And you was just maybe trying to find it out. So it was a very good question. And so the next one is, Ksenia, you said that in the current situation, there are still some days when you don't do anything, and that's okay for you as far as I understood. And there are things to do that don't have any strict deadline. How do you feel in those days? So that's a beautiful example of the 5. It's active listening. Marker number 3, coach explores the client's emotions. And of course, it's marker number 1, in active listening, coach's questions and observations are customized by using what the coach has learned about who the client is. So the backtracking in this session is, I think, one of the big masteries of our mentee today, because her backtracking is very clear, is very clean, and there's no adding something, just the usage of the client's words. And I can say that I admire you for that, Katya. It's just really, really strong. And so as you see, maybe you don't remember the coaching session. So like the first part of the question is just backtracking what client has already said. And then a question, how do you feel in those days? So just studying the emotions of the client. And so the next phrase, and what happens to the feeling of control or freedom those days? So it's, of course, it's the same concerning to the competencies. It's 5 number 3, exploring the emotions. And it is a good example of exploring the nowadays situation, what is really happening now. So the next phrase of the coach, but you said before that freedom is one of the most important things in your life. I think that is about competence number 7, especially marker number 1, when coach shares observations in order to serve the client, because that's what she heard in the previous parts of the session, and that's what she brings to the client for now. And I also think, so not to forget, I also think that there were several options to study what other values she wants to have present in her life, and especially in her professional life, because freedom is one of the main values of Ksenia, surely, and she told you about that. But maybe the question like, what other values you want to bring into your life, or what other values you want to be more present in your life, for example, in the area of professional development, because later you will talk about professional development, because I think if you work more on the values, it will also bring you to another level of coaching. Yes, if we remember the Robert Dill's pyramid. So and also I think that especially competence 8, creating awareness, marker number 5, coach questions have the potential to create new learning for the client. So what you're trying to do with your questions, you're also always creating some new perspective or new angle, and not just moving in the same, in the same plate. So you're just always trying to look from different angles, and that's also one of your strong, capabilities. Mm-hmm. So the next phrase is, what do you feel can help you to bring freedom back to the things that you can't control? So I think it refers us to competences 9, 10, 11, and I would refer your colleagues to 3 of them, because if you would look to the markers, to the PCC markers, you would see that they are coming in 3, and they have shared markers. So it is competence 9, 10, 11. The marker number 3, coach invites or allows client to consider her path forward. And of course, some other competences, but I will try to mention new ones, so you would see like the variety of competences which has been present in the session. So how do you think, what can help you to bring more structure to your ordinary life? That I think is example of very short and powerful question, which brings awareness and which helps you investigate this theme a little bit, and then you're just bringing it to the life, to the everyday life of the client. So it's kind of beautiful way to do it. And next question. I think I couldn't move the screen by myself, or I could. Yeah, okay. So, do you actually have this time? That's a very beautiful example of the provocative question, and in the same moment you was just repeating what the client said to you, because like her last phrase that I'm not sure how to get this time, and then that was a clarifying question, do you actually have this time? And the next one is how much time you think you need every day, and that's of course the same competence. Yes, it's 9, 10, 11, or also clarifying maybe the life of the client and its map, her map of this word. And you said that you have several, fields that you need to control, concerning the baby, concerning some home things, about the moving, about the family admin work. So in those fields, what is the most important for you now to get back to control? So that's a very good question, because after this question, you came to the idea that the only field, as I understood, which needs to be more, which needs to have more values present, is professional development and growth. And actually all other spheres more or less perfectly presented. And I think it is also a good idea maybe to let the client choose. Maybe you could possibly do it earlier, just to choose maybe the context which you will specify, or maybe the field where she would like to concentrate during this particular session. Because when we hear the request and we have an opportunity just to understand the context, it can move us more faster because we could be more precise with the examples and with the clarifying. But in the same moment, there is no there can be an opportunity that in the beginning this wouldn't came to the mind of our coachee, and maybe that was the time when she understood that what she really need to look at is her professional development sphere. So no one knows, but I always like to ask about the context in the beginning, if the request is more or less wide. So the next question is, so what do you think you can do in this field of your professional life to bring more freedom to this subject? It's the same, it's 9, 10, 11. And how can I help you in the whole subject of your current situation, making a professional plan for the following 6 months? What I like about this question is a good example of partnership with a client. And in the same moment, it's starting of the design in actions. And maybe I would recommend you, Katya, to use these partnership questions maybe more often in the session, how they can look like. And of course, you know them, is maybe the questions, how I can help you, or in which role I would be like the best, how do I say it in English? I will serve you the best today. Or the questions, are we going in the right directions? How do you feel about it? Or where we are concerning your request now, or what you would like to speak about concerning your request, or what do you think, what questions should be next. So more giving this partnership role to the client. Maybe you can add like 1 or 2 questions like this, maybe more elegant in that than I suggested you in the session. Then it would create more partnership, and there will be a feeling that a coachee is the one who is leading the session. Mm-hmm. And of course, when we use these partnership questions, it also brings much more awareness in the session and a feeling of ownership of the session, and of the not only of the session, but also the ownership of the insights. Because when we use these partnership questions, the client feels that it's his own insights, it's his own ideas, and there's more ownership, and then it's more easily implemented in his life. That's just my observations during my coaching practice, and I'm sure you know all these questions, but sometimes of course we forget about them. But this one is a beautiful example of this creating partnership through the session. So then your next question is clarifying question. What do you mean by agreement with the family you mean? And that's a good example of these clarifying questions, because some of the colleagues maybe who's listening to us now, maybe they know it about themselves, or maybe they already it's in their past. But sometimes, especially when we are beginners and we don't understand something in the session, maybe we missed something, and we have a wrong feeling that we should make an impression on the client that we understand everything and that we are like fully in the flow. But if we miss something, we can really miss something very important, or we can speak about one thing or understand one thing, but the client meant another thing. So every time when you're not sure what really the client meant, or maybe you, due to internet connection or other noises, maybe you lost some word, never hesitate to ask again. It's not like you would look stupid or anything like that, because in this situation, it's stupid not to ask. So if you know this thing about yourself, that you want to create an impression of like fully present, please stop doing this. But I know a lot of coaches do, and just stop doing it, because it really is more helpful to ask these kind of questions. So the next one is, I'm conscious of the time and we have around 10 minutes left. How would you like to invest them regarding the goal for today that you have set for today, regarding the idea of the structure? So it's a little bit kind of building one question on another, but I think it's maybe due to that the consultation was in English. And what is beautiful here, we can see the good example of partnership, because the question is, how would you like to invest them, these 10 minutes? Then it's a beautiful example of managing time, because coach is also the one who is in charge of managing the time of the session. And also it is, the question is according to the goal of the client and to the request of the coach, or the coachee, sorry. And so the next one is, I'm wondering what are the next steps that you can take right after the session can look like. So of course it's 9, 10, 11, and especially marker number 5, coach partners with the client both to close the session. Oh, sorry, it was the comment for the previous one. Here is the marker number 2. Coach assists the client to design what actions and thinking client will do after the session in order for the client to continue moving toward the client's desired outcomes. And I heard a lot of mentoring sessions when coaches missed this type of questions, but it is very important maybe to ask at least one question about what will be the next steps. Even if we see that the client is very highly motivated and we have an impression that he surely or she surely will do it, but it's always good to ask the questions of what will be your next steps, what you will do after session, because it just kind of creating the feeling that it's not over when the session ends, and that client would also have some responsibilities that he need to take after this session, so his or her goal will be presented in their life. So the next question is, can you share with me what was the most important for you today and what helped you from my questions and maybe what was missing? We see a little bit of several questions in one, but as I already told you, that's the kind of thing that Katya is working on. And the 3 of the questions, or I can say 2 main questions, which we see here, are all very strong. And it refers us to the competence number 8 as creating awareness, first and the second marker, when coach invites the client to state or explore her learning in the session about the situation, the what, and also herself, the who. And so it's a beautiful example of the questions. What should be only changed is asking one question at a time, but Katya is already working on that. So the last phrase is, thank you very much for sharing. Is there anything else you want me to ask you? This is also a beautiful example of partnering. And if you haven't used this question before in your coaching sphere, you can take this question into consideration, because it's really a beautiful one. And I think it's creating a lot of trust and intimacy between coach and the coachee. And the last question, of course, may I ask for your permission to close the session? It's exactly the marker which told us in partnership to close the session in partnership. So we can see the beautiful example of that. So that would be all for markers. And I need to see what time is. Oh, I have nearly 25 minutes. Katya, maybe I would make a little comments on about the minimal requirements and what to my ideas, how you met them, because but first I need to find them, just a second. Maybe for now, what you took from this mentoring for now?
A lot of things. I want to thank you very much, because every question was important for me, and almost everything I've heard everywhere was the new information, and it was very good for me to know about exactly about almost every question to what competence it can be related to, and I already can see the competences that were missing. I mean, apart from what I saw was missing, because there were several times when the question was when the client exactly was saying something about the who, for example. She was talking in the end, and it's not just a mother that I want to be, something like that. And it was the end of her phrase, and then I'm not asking, and who do you want to be? So there are things that I'm aware of, but there are a lot of things, a great amount of different aspects that you've showed me now that are present, and that I can see that are missing. So everything is it's of the greatest value for me.
Okay, then thank you so much. I really hope that it will work for you. And what I will take at least maybe like 10 minutes. So dear colleagues, please go into the chat box and you will see the last link. And I kindly ask you to mute yourself if you have the background noise, or I'm asking you, the host of the session, to mute our colleagues who have this noise. Thank you so much. So the last link, it is a minimal requirement for ACC level, which we will need now. And I will try to... Can you see my screen? Yes?
No, we don't see.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe, Zhenya, if you are here with us, if you can help me to show maybe your own screen with this minimal skill requirements of ACC.
Okay, 1 minute, I will try.
Oh, thank you. And for colleagues who has another gadget, it will be also helpful to open the minimal requirements for ACC if we wouldn't have it on the screen, because I would refer to them and I would basically tell you some information about them. So for each level of credential, we have minimal requirements. So today we will be focusing on ACC skill requirements, because Katya wants to apply to the ACC credential. For example, if you're preparing yourself to the PCC credential, then you would just open the PCC requirements and you maybe will analyze your sessions through PCC requirements, and the same with MCC. And I think that just understanding the minimal requirements is like the half of the success when you apply to the credential level. So,
do you see my screen?
Me personally, I don't, but maybe I did something wrong. That happens with me.
I see the PCC markers, the competence.
Yeah, PCC markers.
It's the first link, but we need the second link.
The second link?
The last, yeah. The last thing. So I will start while Jenny is helping us. I will start.
Actually, I don't see this link, the second one. Dear participants, do you have the second link? Chat. Yeah.
Alexandra helped us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexandra. Okay. 1 minute. I will try to open it.
Thank you so much, Jenny. So I will already start because I have it written. Of course, we probably wouldn't have enough time to go through whole 11, but I will go step by step. Yes, thank you, Jenny. It is the exact thing that we need. Can you go to the first one?
Okay.
Thank you so much for your patience. Here is the place where when I want to say that I love you.
Oh, yes, I love you too, you know, always.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So the first one about meeting ethical guidelines and professional standards. So here is a lot of information. If it's the first time when you are met with minimal skill requirements, just try to follow me because you will hear the things that you already know. Maybe you heard it in your coaching school or maybe in different other mentoring processes, but try not to read it because you will just wouldn't catch it because I will jump from one to another. Just try to listen, and maybe if you know them, so just follow my thoughts, and maybe you would write some comments in the chat box. It would be very also helpful for the whole process of our mentoring today. So meeting ethical guideline, okay, and professional standards. So as I can see from this session and from knowing Katya for a long time already, I think that this was met, and because I can fully see that it was an understanding of a coaching ethic and standards, and I saw Katya's ability to apply them appropriately in this coaching situation. So in this coaching session, I think these ethical standards and professional standards were met. The second one, so we can go a little bit down in our share screen. The second one, it's establishing the coaching agreement. And Jenny, if you hear us, you can just scroll down a little bit and a little bit. Yeah. So I think that there was kind of depth of creation and agreement for session, and especially what created it. It's the competence to marker number 3, because there was several value-oriented questions. They were a little bit the same, how Katya structuralized them. They were a little bit the same, but they were present and they were very good. And I also write down what could enrich it. Maybe I would catch it now, or I will tell you later. Okay, I will tell you later. That's more about working with metaphors, or maybe, you know, the assumption or proposing to discuss what important is not happening when it is not present in life, then what's important is not presented, not happening. That's also a way to study values of the client. And we remember that if we go to the level of values, then the whole session is changed. And of course, if we will improve the session to the level of who, asking about the roles, and the good maybe way of going to the roles and to the who level is working with the metaphors. So that's kind of what is helping us. So, and also I think with what is shown in this session is that the coach's ability to partner with the client in creation of agreement, measures of success, and issues to be addressed, it was all fully present. And I can say that the competence number 2 was very good represented at a very good level of ACC, and maybe some markers were at the level of PCC, and what we will brought surely to the level of PCC, these more value-oriented questions. And the minimal requirements were surely met because coach asked the client what she wanted to work on, and Katya also attended the agenda throughout the coaching. So these minimal requirements were met. And also I wanted to comment on the first competence, minimal requirements, that there were no focusing on telling the client what to do or how to do it, so-called consultant mode. There were no example of that. And conversation was mostly on present and future issues and wasn't based primarily in the past, so-called therapeutical mode. So we also didn't see the examples of that. So it was like clear coaching, clean coaching sessions. That I was commenting on the first competence and minimal requirement. So the third one is establishing trust and intimacy with the client. And as I saw, there was no demonstration of significant interest in the coach's view of the situation. They were more interested in the client's view that describes that this competence was surely 100% shown in this session. And there was a lot of seeking of information from the client about the client's thinking around the situation. And there were no attempts on demonstration on Katya's demonstration of knowledge about the topic. So there was no shown of so-called consultant mode. And also Katya showed beautiful concern for the client, and she provided ongoing support for new behaviors and new actions at a good ACC level. And maybe working with the beliefs system, maybe a little bit with the body would help her to create more support in the session. And also maybe working with the tones of the client. So sometimes Ksenia was pausing, and sometimes her tone was changing. And maybe if you put a little bit attention to that, maybe once or twice, that will also help to deepen the session and to create more trust and intimacy, and of course more coaching presence. So it's competence number 4. But what I can tell you, on the level of ACC, it was beautifully made. But if we will just concentrate on what will bring this session to the PCC level, of course, it also like putting attention not only to emotions and to the intellectual level, but also to the level of tone, voice, and pauses. Mm-hmm. So the minimal requirements of a coaching presence were surely met, minimal requirements for ACC were surely met because coach attended to the agenda. Katya was responsive to information concerning agenda, and she was attentive to what actions the client is taking in relation to agenda, what already took and what need to be taken. So surely it was met. And I can also say that Katya was both present and flexible during the coaching process, although sometimes, as you mentioned, sometimes your poses were very rich and beautiful, but sometimes I can hear that you are thinking in this moment, but you already said that probably you would translate it, your thoughts from Russian into English. Exactly. Yeah, but I can see that some poses were very beautiful and were really from coaching presence. So what you need to do is just to develop maybe your meditational practices or all the practices that which is really helping you to be more present in the session, less think and more feel. And also I can tell that sometimes you really went with the gut and you used your intuition, and that was really beautiful. And I can say that especially in the beginning when Ksenia was laughing, you also used the humor, and that created a lot of lightness in the beginning of the session. And the next one, active listening. I can say that you were not demonstrating any knowledge about the topic or telling the client what to do about the topic. So there were no consulting mode again. And I saw that you beautifully do backtracking. So you beautifully were summarizing, paraphrasing, but you more often use clean words of the client. It is also beautiful. And you were mirroring back what Ksenia said to you, and you always try to ensure clarity and understanding, and that's your strong role. Strong role. Okay, just imagine that everybody understands what I meant. So, and I can say that you were encouraging and accepting and exploring Ksenia's expression of feelings and perceptions. And what I wanted to be presented a little bit more is maybe belief system, body, feelings, and metaphors. A little bit more. It will surely just upgrade it to the beautiful PCC level. So about the powerful questioning, the competence number 6, minimal requirements for ACC level. I saw that they were exploring what issues exist for the client rather than telling what to do or suggesting any solutions. So again, the minimal requirement is not to show the consultant mode, and that was met. There were no consultant mode, but there were questions that reflected active listening. There were a lot of them, and understanding of the client's perspective, views, ideas, and a lot of questions that evoke discovery, insights, and create commitment, especially in the end. And there were a lot of examples of open-ended questions that create greater clarity and possibility of new learning. And I can say that you made a great improvement in this year in this field. So really worshiping you for that. And I need to look at the time. What time is it now?
You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes left. Okay, so I would go a little bit further to the 7th, to the right communication. So surely you use the language appropriate and respectful. What would make the session better is more usage of metaphor and analogy to help to illustrate, yes, the points of view and verbal pictures, because you are very beautifully operating in an intellectual mode, and I wanted more like this beautiful mode to be present. And you were very direct and clear in sharing and providing feedback. That's were beautiful. And you were helping to see the situation from different angles, so it was also present. We should go to the next one. So creating awareness, we understand that its ability to integrate and evaluate multiple sources of information, and what we can easily see that in this session were beautifully present the intellectual mode. So everything which was said by words or meant were opened and brought to the client. But what maybe I want to advise is more listening to the gut and more bringing what your intuition tells you, because you already did it in this session, and it really helped when you asked the question about the congruity of what is what's said now. And I think that maybe if you would read what is not said, and if you would present these ideas to the client, it will also enrich the session. So about 9, 10, 11, I think we already commented a lot because there was a lot of, in the end, there was a lot of creation, of commitment, of progress, and about agreed coaching results. There was some exploration. Maybe what will help more, it's in partnership to ask where we are about concerning our request now. What do you think? What are your learnings? Etc. etc. So this already been told, and I think in the last I don't know, maybe 7 minutes left. So can you comment on maybe what you gained from this brief overview of minimal skill requirements? Of course, you are aware of them because in our course we put a lot of attention to these minimal requirements, but concerning what I said now, maybe you have like some ideas.
Yes, that was very interesting to me to see those requirements exactly in my case, in the case of my session, what is applied and what is not. And I feel myself much more better, much more confident now when I see that because before, when you think about this, the credentials, well, I know that they exist. I know how they are. I know how to apply, but I'm not sure. I'm not applying. I'm not sure if I do apply.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see that I do, and it's quite a few, that really gives me that's a perfect feeling. Mm-hmm. And what is most important for me to know about what was missing, all in all, it can fit in the last phrase that you said, read what is not said.
Mm-hmm.
That's most powerful for me, because it's exactly, I felt something, apart from that I missed some answers, or maybe that I missed some keywords, I felt that something else was missing, but I couldn't understand what. And now when you said that this really exploring the belief system, the body, the language, the way Ksenia was speaking, where she was laughing and where the tone was changing, this is what was missing here. And I can see that almost everywhere it's exactly this point. And exactly the phrase you used, it just everything fits in there, that read not only from what is said, but what is not said. It's opening absolutely new dimension for me now. And it's very interesting, because I used to say before that I am exactly good with metaphor, and when I'm a coachee myself, I am just flying over there in different dimensions of metaphors. But now I understand that I do it and I'm good in it when the client starts with, when the client is very metaphorical, when they use that, when I do it, I feel like I'm or something, then I jump in there and I swim there and I feel okay. But when the client doesn't bring the subject himself or herself to the session, I'm also losing it. Maybe I'm afraid to bring it in. Maybe I don't feel enough confidence yet. But so that's very important for me. It's like new field and new dimension to explore in my professional path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing it with me. And maybe if Ksenia is present here and if she has an opportunity to take a microphone, I don't know whether she has this opportunity. Oh yeah,
I am present. Hi, but I can't start video because I think Evgenia stopped it.
Oh, I see. Maybe Evgenia will change this, but you can.
No, I think we can ask Dmitry. Dmitry, did you do something?
That's a support, collective support.
Yeah. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Well, to me, it was very helpful to hear your insights, Esther, and thank you so much for them. Because we have been discussing this session with Katya, and as a client, I felt that it was a strong session, but I couldn't quite explain why. And when I had my request for the session, I also was wondering, my main question was to see how other coaches can switch from this secretarial request, as you called them once, and I think it's quite precise, like what they are. How a coach can switch from secretarial requests to something bigger, to talk about values while client doesn't want to talk about values, or maybe not. Maybe the client is ready to talk about values, but not quite ready to start the conversation himself. So, and Katya did it beautifully. I mean, I wasn't resisting, but at the same time, not necessarily I wanted to go there, but I did feel this desire to explore more once she started asking questions. And, oh, sorry, I have this addition. Yeah. And now I understand what happened in the session that made it very strong. So thank you so much for this.
Mm-hmm. And maybe have some ideas if you remember your feelings after the session. What did you like most about the sessions, or maybe the way Katya was coaching you?
Well, Katya mentioned metaphors, and to me, actually, I felt grateful that she didn't go there. I too am very, I can't say I'm very good with metaphors, but I go to metaphors and resort to metaphors a lot of times. It's easy for me to do, but at the same time, I find that to me it's not very helpful, and the action part of, action aspect of behavior is often missing for me. So we didn't discuss it in the session, but what Katya did was actually quite helpful when she explored the deeper meaning of what's happening, and helped me to understand more and talk more about what's happening. But then she went to actions and planning softly. So it wasn't, it was within the ICF guidelines, but still it was quite, well, I can't say tough, but it was hard for me to, go away from the question, or just, switch back to just exploring and discussing. And that was very helpful. And I remember that after the session, in the session, I had this discovery that the way I plan my life is not very helpful anymore, and that I have to change how I see my goal in general. And I remember that I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and actually doing things in terms of planning that I haven't been doing before. And it did help. I still am working on it, but at the same time, I see the difference. So that was the most helpful thing.
Thank you. And thank you for your today's presence. I think that will help a lot our colleagues. Maybe they will ask some questions and you're the only one who can answer them due to your first person perception.
Colleagues, excuse me for 1 second, for one short break. Before we go into question, I would like first of all thank Esther for accepting our invitation to join our English coaching week for the second time. I would like to remember that the first time Esther participated in previous English coaching work, and she was a mentee with our MCC coach Gorka Bartolome from Spain. And now we see big progress and difference in Esther's coaching. And today you showed Esther beautiful mentoring as a master certified coach. Many thanks for you for that on my behalf and on behalf of our all English community in Russia and Russian speaking countries. Yeah, first of all. So what else I would like to mention about level of English? So you and Katya talked a little bit about level of English. So you have beautiful level of English, everybody makes mistakes. As I usually say, I make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. But anyway, it was a great example when we could see mentoring of 2 Russian people in English. And nowadays I think it's getting more and more popular that Russian coaches use services of mentors, English-speaking mentors. So, and they do mentoring in English or other languages, even in other languages, not only English. So, and many thanks for that. And of course, one more thing, Esther, what time do you have right now?
Oh, it's the beginning of the night. I think it's like 2
a.m.
Beginning of 2 a.m. Yeah, something like that.
So you're our hero again, because it's mentoring in English at night. Okay. So what do you think about your experience? I think for you today it was like new experience.
It's not my first experience in coaching in English. In mentoring, in English. I used to mentor some of my colleagues who were new to ICF. But I didn't do it professionally, so I can say that's the first real professional mentoring in English. And I was also remembering the last year mentoring with Gorka, and just remembering how many things changed. And I think also for the 3 years ago, I helped also as a volunteer to organize your conference. So participating like 3 years already. Yeah, and I think how a lot of things changed in this year, and I took a lot of education because I know as you and there's a lot of our colleagues, I'm craving for education. So I became also professional mentor and supervisor and a lot of other interest in education. So yeah, like it's only a year, but so many things changed. And thank you for very much for calling me, and I'm really happy to be here with the colleagues. So thank you for organizing that.
I really appreciate your contribution to our development, because we grow together, we learn together with each other from each other. And now, okay, time for questions, Evgenia.
Yes, dear colleagues, if you prepared your questions, now it's time to ask them. Do you have any? Please use microphone and video.
I see one in the chat box. I'm not sure is the question. I'm preparing for ACC certification. Could you share with us how did you start it? What helped you to become an ACC at the first short time? Where did you get the main volume of clients? Oh, I have never been actually an ACC coach. My first credential was a PCC, and I already have 2,400 hours when I applied for PCC, because I think I already had at that time 7 coaching schools education, but they were not ICF coaching. So I prepared specifically myself for PCC accreditation, and I just studied the markers, very like focused only for the markers, because I had a lot of experience, but I need to be fitted into the markers, into the ICF guidelines. So where did I get the main volume of clients? Well, I can say that's the word of mouth mostly. I never did any advertisement. Actually, I'm in professional coaching for 10 years. And most part of this time I worked for a coaching center, Style of Life Academy. And why I came very early at the coaching professions, that because my mother is a coach, maybe you know her name is Landa. And of course, that's what brought me into this profession at a very early ages. And also that's what helped me to become the youngest MCC in the world. Of course, it's due to that I started very early. I think I was 10 years, yes, I was 19, 20 years old when I started to do it professionally.
Thank you for sharing, Esther. It's very interesting. I'm still waiting your personal story from the beginning. I mean, with the details. Okay, so dear colleagues, we have a time for questions. Yes, also maybe about mentor session.
Any kind of questions, I would be more than happy to answer them, because I'm really here for you, to help you, maybe to encourage you. And
I would like to hear your comments about the question of coach. This part. Coach said, "What do you mean?" She was clarifying. What do you mean with the family? You mean? So it was a question. For me, it's like it seems for me, it's an assumption. Yeah, the second question. So it's the question at the same time, and so it's assumption. So how it's interesting your comments in this case.
You know, I can see how you see that it's an assumption, but unfortunately, I don't have the questions represented clearly. But I looked at that phrase and I understand that it was clarifying. So she still wants to clarify. So she's not asking, is it about family? Because like the first part of the question was like clean clarifying. So we would just assume that that's the way that she thinking, and maybe her thoughts was faster than how she asked her question. So no big mistake here.
I thought that it creates some strict frames for a client. No, it's not like that.
Can you please read the first part of the question?
The first, it's clarifying. Yeah. What do you mean? It's the first question, and the second one right after this question. With the family, you mean?
Because it was actually like one phrase, but the transcription divides it into two. When you are listening, it's like one phrase, and so there was not a big assumption. It was not assertive, so it was not like directively. And we can also, as I already said, I looked at the mentoring process, focusing that Katya is preparing herself to ACC level. Because if Katya was preparing herself to MCC level, I would maybe say different things. But for ACC level, it was a beautiful example of clarifying.
Thank you. So, colleagues, do you have colleagues have a question personally to you. Do you have any specialization in coaching? I introduced you before a lot of your education, so it's about this. Inga?
Oh, actually, Inga, I have like 8 or now 9 coaching educations from different schools, most of them international ones. And the first specialization I had is a life and work balance coaching, because the coaching center which I'm working at, Style of Life Academy, specialized in life and work balance coaching. Then I worked a lot in executive coaching, and now I can say, but it was all in the field of transformational coaching, because I never do strictly goal-oriented coaching. I always try to deepen the request. So I can say that my specialization is transformational coaching, but mostly I work with executives nowadays. And for the beginning of my career, because I was a professional sportsman and I also was studying in and doing my dissertation in sport psychology, I did a little bit in the beginning the sport coaching, but now it's less and less present in my life.
Thank you very much for answering. Interesting about sports psychology. We didn't know before. Yeah.
I like the way you are supporting the conversation and trying like to bring it up. I'm just remembering our work together in ICF Russia when we have these conferences, and like we try to ask the questions when we see that participants are not so active as we
Yes, you often open this secret part of our job. So thank you. Yeah, can I ask by voice one more question? Of course, Inga, and I think that it will be the last question, because unfortunately our time almost has finished, and after we will announce our day tomorrow. Inga?
And before Inga is asking question, maybe colleagues, you have like 1 or 2 words. What are you taking from this mentoring session? Just process within yourself, and maybe you would write just 1 word or sentence or a lot of words as you wish. And I would be very grateful for this. And I think it will help you to go out of this mentoring with a learning. So I suggest you to do that in the chat box. We would just read it with a great pleasure. And Inga, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please ask your question.
It looks like I'm your fan, Esther, because my question, I have the most more questions than other. I'm sorry for my English. I'm trying to do it as best as possible. The third thing that I would like to say that I have taken from your session is that it's a perfect example of right coaching, how it should be. So all my thoughts about is it right or is it correct. Now it's clear, so thank you very much. And my question is about specialization too. It's popular now that it's like executive coaching, sales coaching, life and balance coaching specialization. It's very popular now, but coaching is not a consulting, is not training. So why, how coach can use his expertise if he can't say what he knows and what he thinks? So why this specialization is important? Oh, I don't know. Do you understand what I mean? So why coach needs specialization if he works by his competences, not or techniques, not knowledge and expertise?
I think you should ask a person who tells you that the coach must need the level of that the coach must have a niche or specialization. Because a lot of years I was working without any kind of specialization, but then I just understand that I prefer to work with some requests, or I prefer to work with the type of the clients which I can be more helpful, or which are really more interesting for me to work with. But some coaches prefer, if they have a big expertise or a big part of their life or with this sphere, they prefer to work on this sphere, but you should better ask them. And I see also Svetlana is commenting. Maybe she wants to say something.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alex, sorry for interrupting, but our time has finished already. So, colleagues, if you have any questions, you can ask personally Esther in a Facebook, for example, if you have the link. And now time for finishing. So, Esther, thank you very much for this really useful experience, and for me also, and I hope for our colleagues. I'm sure that for our colleagues it's very helpful and useful for their job. So, what about tomorrow, Dmitry? Yeah, tomorrow our last day of English Coaching Week, and we will summarize our English Coaching Week, and we'll share our takeaways and our takeaways for the future. So please join us with the same link at the same time, and thank you for being with us all these days. And I see a lot of thanks for Esther, and thank you participants for your presence, as Esther told before. So see you tomorrow, and have a nice day. Join us tomorrow again.
Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me in Facebook. I wrote how I'm named in Facebook. Yes, and thank you all that joined, and especially thank those people who comment. And thank you, Zhenya, for hosting this event. And thank you so much, Dmitry, for organizing it. I think it's very helpful for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Thank you, my dear colleagues. Bye-bye. Have a great day today.